Welcome to the nostalgic corner of the internet, where I'm trying to beat all 4,218 PS2 games, and this game is GrimGrimoire. Now I know what you're asking yourself, is this game really two-dimensional StarCraft, but anime? Yeah, it is. It pretty much is. The battles play out very similar to how a game of StarCraft, or at least any other RTS, would play out. You have a base, you have some units that you summon, you go fight some other people, and you try and destroy their units, and probably all of their buildings too, which in this game is pretty much similar. To win, you have to destroy the enemy's runes. As I go on, you'll see what a rune is, but for now, making units, having them fight, destroying runes, that's exactly what we got going here. So, are you ready for a story about magic, time, Harry Potter, and anime? Look no further. Meet the main character, Lilith Blonde, a typical anime witch who starts out as being awkward and surprisingly changes to being more competent by the end of the story, something in anime I don't really see very often. She's now joined this magic academy where she's going to learn magic and be able to use runes from this thing called a grimoire to summon allies to fight by her side, or at least use magic in general. I'm not really sure what else they use the magic for. Her first professor, Grimildor, who is Dumbledore's second cousin once removed, he introduces you to Gaff, this little forest elf who's actually your caretaker now. I'm not really sure why he has to be your caretaker, but he's super happy to be your caretaker. And then he also explains, hey, don't go out into the halls at night, and then leaves it there. Then you meet a woman named Margarita Surprise, which is just a downer of a name. Poor woman. She's got a little frog on her head whose name is Shirley, and that definitely won't be an airplane reference later in the game. But you learn that she is another student at the school, and she's going to be your friend now, at least that's what she says. After this, we head to our very own room in the Magic Academy, where Gaff tells us late at night when we get up to walk around at night, the reason he told you not to go in the halls is because there's a scary ghost witch that stalks the halls and will literally kill you, which sounds like maybe there's no standards and practices looking at the Magic Academy and saying, hey, let's not leave ghosts that kill kids in your school. But suddenly Margarita Surprise bursts in the room and is like, ha, I got away from the ghost. Why are you running in the halls away from the ghost? That just stay in your fucking room. But she wants to go outside and get a breath of fresh air, and your character's like, no, I'm not going out there. It seems stupid. After this, we're presented with this kind of level select screen where we see day one, we get to select a difficulty, and there's several books on each of the bookshelves that correspond to each part of day 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are 3 books. The first book is always story, the second book is always the mission, and the third book is always the rest of the story for that day. So each day there will only be one mission, and you get to choose the difficulty for each mission. So if you find it too hard, you can go dial it back a little bit for this specific mission. At the top right of the screen, you can see a bar that's actually a progress bar to how far you are in the game, which is actually kind of nice. I'm not sure about how immersive that feels, but at least you kind of know where you are in the story and you know what's coming up if you're almost at the end. Then if you press down, there are special trial levels that are harder and you get points and stuff like that based on stuff. I don't know. I never did any of those because those aren't necessary to beat the game, so I skipped them. Once I select the very first day, we get a little bit of story from Grimildor. He's teaching you how to use the grimoire and how to use magic runes to summon things for you to use. Now at first he seems like, oh yeah, the elves that you'll be using are helpful to us because they're nice to us and we're nice to them. But once you get to the mission, he says this: because of their diligence, no elf can refuse to lend his powers to a magician, which sounds pretty suspicious, and I'm not sure I like that. There's a few things I don't like about this game. That's really weird. I don't think that's okay to say, but whatever, dude. Fine. We're gonna make the elves do whatever we fucking want to do. And this first mission is very much a tutorial, and it's super, super boring. It's pretty much just, hey, take these elves, get this mana crystal, which is kind of like StarCraft, getting the crystals, bring it back to the rune, and you get that to spend on your units. You have to just sit there and watch it for a little while, and then it's like, all right, you're done. You've seen what happens. But I feel like the next several tutorials could all have been in one mission so that there could have been less loading and things in between. I understand that there's story, but goddamn, these missions are really slow at the beginning, so it takes a while to get into. After our first mission, we get to meet these 2 other students, Bartito and Hiram. They're arguing about something that's not quite clear about yet, and you'll figure it out later, but they are arguing, and when you come up, they kind of start talking to you, and Hiram is actually nice, Bartito's a weirdo, but Hiram then tells you about the fact that this Magic Academy used to be a tower owned by the archmage, and he's very powerful, and don't go through any doors you don't know, because if you go through them, there might be an enchantment on them that will kill you. And it's like, again, where are the standards and practices for this fucking school? On to day 2, where we learn a little bit more from Grimildor about some of the units that we can use in battle, and they actually fight this time, and they are little fairies with bows, and they're drawn very interestingly. While the animation and drawings are nice, it seems a little someone's interested in something here. Anyway, we learn that they move around through the level, and you're fighting demons. Now, you actually get a chance to access these demons later, but right now you're only using the fairies and the elves, and this one's pretty simple. simple. You learn how to move your units, you learn how to attack with your units, and you learn how to defend your units. It's very simple, and you're really not given any way to lose unless you absolutely push no buttons. But it's pretty simple, and honestly, we'll learn later the fairies are the best units in the game, pretty much, because, as you can tell in this screen here, you can see the imps moving up stairwells to get to different levels. Don't forget, this is two-dimensional StarCraft. So they move up these stairs to get to different levels to then across. The fairy doesn't have to do that. She just fucking flies around. That is probably the best thing in this game, is to have units that don't get stopped by floors and walls. They can just move right through them. So this battle teaches you very quickly that the fairies are really good. After this, we're back in the halls where we meet yet another student, or so we think. Her name is Amaretta Virgin, and she's very weird. She's not actually a real person. We'll figure this out later, but she also has interesting clothes on. I'm not really sure why she has this, but then the next part is really startling. A teacher comes up, and he's a devil, and he makes very weird advances towards this woman, and she calls him her uncle. I don't think that's true. I don't know why she said that, but she says it, and then he says some real weird shit, and then Lilith saves her. She's like, that's really weird, don't do that. Amaretta says, his advances always make me nervous. Yeah, that's really weird that a teacher is doing that. And look, let me just say this real quick. This doesn't happen very many more times game, which I'm very glad about, because this is fucking weird, dude. No, this isn't okay. I hate it when they give characters the character trait that they are perverts in some way. Now, we'll find out later why he does this. There is a reason, but that doesn't necessarily make it okay. It makes it still uncomfortable. Moving on to day 3, Grimoire teaches us a little bit more about magic through defense this time. Lilith does bring up the fact that there's a devil, the guy we met just a little bit ago, as a teacher, and Grimoire just says, oh yeah, he's the finest teacher we've got, don't worry, and it's like, oh, the sexual harasser, he's the best teacher. Before we actually start the mission, we get to see this Grimoire data screen, where you get to see where there are 4 types of magic. There's glamour, alchemy, sorcery, and necromancy. I'm a little confused why they call it glamour, but it doesn't matter. This one is the one you've been using with the elves and fairies, and you get 3 books for each of these things, and they make you different units when you summon those runes. They also give you special upgrades. If you click into one, it will show you what you've learned and what each of those things does, which makes it easy to understand how the books work. That way, when you get into battle, you just kind of click what you need to click and you know what you're getting. We start the next mission and we get to use the new rune we got for glamour, which doesn't really give you any new units yet. Later it will. For now, it's just upgrades, and once you level it up to level 2, which is how you get new upgrades during a mission, the elves are now able to build towers, and those towers will shoot at enemies that come close. And in fact, you actually get to see towers on the enemy side as well. These very scantily clad, ass-shaking ladies, which I don't understand why this is the only unit in the game that does this, but okay, fine, whatever. They shake their ass at you. But they fire at you as you come by, and some of the towers have different properties, like hitting a group of enemies, but in the end, these towers help protect your runes, your workers, and the crystal from getting attacked by enemies, especially if you have your little army away from your base, which is pretty much going to be most of the time. After this next tutorial battle, we meet 2 new teachers we haven't met before, Opalneria and Chartreuse. Chartreuse is a lion who was a person who was cursed to be a lion. Opalneria is the necromancy teacher who is in love with him as long as he was human, which is kind of, vapid, I guess. But she says, hey, if my love will break your spell, and he's like, I'm immortal, there's no need for love. And it's kind of the dynamic is supposed to be interesting. It's okay, it's not bad, but it doesn't go too much further. We do get sort of an ending later, but Anyway, Chartreuse is the alchemy teacher as well, so you'll be learning from these people later. The next tutorial battle we have is with the new teacher Opalneria, and she teaches us to use the necromancy rune. Now, we learn the difference between 2 different types of units, and these are general. There are astral units, which don't have a physical body, they look like ghosts, and then there's substance, which are the fairies and the elves we were using before. And units that don't have attacks that can hit astral enemies don't hit them at all. So this phantom cannot get hit by an imp because the imp only has a physical attack. Magic, fire, stuff like that can hit enemies that are astral. And then astral enemies are usually a little bit more powerful against substance enemies. So you got to kind of figure out a little bit of a strategy so that you know what your opponent is using so you can get the correct units to fight them. After this battle, the devil teacher Advocat shows up and Opalneria is not happy. It doesn't seem like very many people actually like this teacher, even though he's the best teacher they have. It sounds like he's a fucking idiot. But she warns Lilith about him and is just like, get out of my room, and he just leaves. But before he does say any sensible devil would, as his units are weak to her units. So that's actually a good bit of information to have, I guess, for the gameplay. After this, it's day 5, which is supposedly the last day that we're here. And it begins with Lilith having a creepy feeling out in the hallway. Bartito comes up to her and says, hey, someone released the seal holding the archmage, which means that he's now free roaming the Magic Academy, which again, why is there an archmage sealed up in this place where there's kids learning? I don't understand. And why is this just so casual? You know what I mean? Like all these terrible things in here. Anyway, he tells you that he is going to stop the archmage if he can, and that if he does not come back in 20 minutes to just take Margarita and leave, which doesn't go well, so we actually have to end up defending ourselves. This battle has one win condition, and that's survive for 20 minutes. And honestly, you can actually win by destroying all of your enemies' runes. But here, I'm still kind of new to the game, and I didn't even realize that was possible. So at this point, I'm just surviving for 20 minutes, because that's what I was told. As the battle goes on, I do realize that it's pretty tough, and I just want to go ahead and mention real quick that I summoned all of my extremely casual StarCraft powers from when I was younger, and I summoned more units than my enemy. And you know what? It's not even unfounded. That information is not unfounded, because if you open the instruction manual that comes with the game, there's a Q&A section where it actually tells you for the very first piece of advice, I want to win a battle easily. How can I do that? Most of the time, simply having more familiars gives you an advantage. Attack with numbers and you'll be able to win with less damage to your own forces. No shit, having more units in this game means most likely that you will win. Now, that is a pretty bare bones thing to work with in a game such as this, where it really should be all about your understanding of the units and your skill managing your units and builds. But this isn't that type of game. While it is difficult if you were to play on the higher difficulties, honestly, pretty much any time you play, as long as you're just playing to win, you're going to win by making more units and staying ahead of your enemy and just being smart about how you attack. It's pretty simple. After this battle, Lilith tells Margarita to just get the fudge out of there, and then she follows her afterwards and finds out that the Archmage has already been summoned. He's there, he's killed everyone including Margarita. He says this extremely corny-ass line.
A child's neck is small, perfect for these bony hands to squeeze the life out of.
And then he says, listen to your funeral bells, you're going to die now. And he also does mention the Philosopher's Stone. Now, this has been briefly mentioned before. We don't know much about it, but that is hidden somewhere in the Magic Academy. Yet another thing that is not being regulated. Just a fucking Philosopher's Stone, and no one's really exactly sure what it does. No one really knows. I don't know why, but no one knows where it is either. It's just fucking hidden. This will be important later, and this is yet another Harry Potter fucking reference. Anyway, as we believe he's about to kill her, the screen flashes, and then these words come up that at first don't register right away because, well, it's very unexpected. And she then ends up back in time to the very first night she got there. Now, it does take a second to kind of realize that's what's going on because it happens very quickly. But once you do, you're like, oh, this is a time loop thing now, right? Or was it a dream? Is it a time loop or a dream? Oddly enough, she's really confused as to why she's reliving all these events again, and she does something pretty smart that I'm very proud of, thank God. She immediately, the next morning, after she's slept it off and realized that it's still going on, goes and tells Gramaldor, before she even learns a goddamn thing, goes and tells him the whole story. So that's actually helpful, oh my God. But then Advocat shows up, and he's wary of what she's saying. He's suspicious, right? So that's fine, whatever. He actually challenges her to a battle right here to see if she's telling the truth, because then she would know how things go here since she is a brand new student and didn't before know magic. The battle against Advocat isn't too difficult, although you do kind of get let loose at this point. There is no more tutorial speak in this level, which is nice. You get to just use what you've got for spells from these last 5 days, and then you get to kind of learn things. Now, I did learn a couple interesting things here. One, you can only select so many units of one type. So let's say I'm selecting the fairies. I can only select up to 8 fairies at a time. Yes, it's pretty easy. You click on one, you press up D-pad, and it will select everyone on the screen of the same type. And if there's more, well, obviously it doesn't select them. But that's a problem because you can only select 8 at a time, and you really need more than 8 to fight big battles. You need like 2 or 3 groups, and there is no way to queue up groups to then later select, or at least not that I figured out. And I feel like it should have had something like that, but I don't know how they would have done it. But you can't. So you can only select 8 at a time, so that means you have to make a couple groups and then move the groups away from each other using the attack command, so that they will go and attack whatever is in their path. And you just have both groups kind of move together. That way you can keep them helping each other, because obviously the more guys you have, the better you'll do. The next thing I learned is you cannot select more than one type of unit at a time, which is really frustrating because the game gives you 4 different types of magic to use, enemies to spawn from those runes, and you can't select all of them together. You have to select them one at a time in each type of unit. So you can't have fairies and phantoms and have them selected at the same time. You have to make 2 different groups and then send them off, just as if you had 2 groups of fairies. But then that makes it even more of a micromanagement because then you can only select a few units on your side at a time, and so it really hampers the experience of fighting. After this battle, Advocate says that he believes you, but he still wants to understand who did this, as well as Gamildor, because obviously someone releases the archmage and it kills everyone. So if this is true, they need to figure it out quick. We also learn a little bit, very briefly, about devils having contracts over the last couple story elements, but it's not elaborated on enough to quite understand it. But we know that devils have contracts with humans, and so this teacher has one somehow to teach. Gamildor also says, don't worry about him, he's just here to teach, which, yes, he may have a contract that says that, but then he also says never take a devil at his word, and then something about the benefit of the doubt. But he's a fucking devil, dude, so if the Advocate believes if he can exonerate himself quickly, he's fine. But then he also says, you come to my class tomorrow, I'll teach you more about devils. So we're gonna go to the sexual harassers class. When we arrive at class the next day, we actually get some interesting information from Advocate. Lilith asks him if he has a contract with Gamildor to teach here. He says, no, of course I wouldn't accept a contract with that dude, but instead, I was summoned by the Lemegeton, a grimoire that was used by this really powerful guy, but there's no one attached to it anymore. I assume that the person who had it before died, so he's here with that grimoire, but he has no master, no owner. He won't really expand anymore on how those things work. He says some confidentiality type thing just to get out of talking about it, and instead just wants to teach me how to use dragons. This next part is actually really exciting because I did not expect dragons to be this cool. In fact, there are a couple large enemies and units in the game that are cool and have these very unique aspects about them, and the dragon is no exception. He, instead of flying, he crawls across the outer walls as if he just scales right through the 2D environment. He can break walls, he doesn't need to use stairs, and his attacks are enormously wide area of attacks. It's fire, so he can hit any unit, and he can hit multiple units in one go. And I mean, it's such a wide area of attack that it can go up and down below him and above him, as well as in front of him. They are just terrifying creatures, and the animation is wonderful, the screen shake is wonderful, they're scary. I think they did a really good job, and I'm really glad they added something like this into the game. The first time I do this mission, I lose because I didn't understand that was going to happen. So once I come back to the mission, I make my dragon much quicker, and I also notice I have another unit here, and it's a little cat. If you click on the cat, it has an ability to put enemies to sleep. All I do is drag the cat over and have him put the other dragon to sleep, rendering him completely useless, allowing my dragon to kill him as well as all the other units around it. The cats are extremely helpful for large units like this, and you absolutely need something like this. After the battle, Advocate does not believe this is your first time at the academy, and technically it's not since we were already here 5 days ago. He then goes on to tell us that Dr. Chartreuse, one of the teachers, was actually the Archmage's apprentice, so that's surprising I suppose because he still works here at the school, but he's also cursed, and he's probably the nicest person here. After this, Lilith actually goes to visit Dr. Chartreuse and sees Bartito as well as Amaretta, who are with Dr. Chartreuse helping him in his lab. She does ask him about the Archmage, and he says that he was a great teacher, which I guess if he's trying to kill everyone, he should be a great teacher, like the devil. Everyone just loves terrible, great teachers. But he does say that this guy created the Philosopher's Stone, along with Gamildor and Luje, who was another professor at the school. We don't really know too much about her, just her name, and that she helped create the Philosopher's Stone. Then, after this, the Archmage actually makes a deal with the devil, Grimlet, to become the Archmage. Well, then a 3-way battle starts to happen between the professors, Grimlet, the devil, and the Archmage, who was a human. The Philosopher's Stone ends up being pretty powerful. Grimlet wants the Archmage's soul as recompense for all the stuff that he did for him, but everyone wants to keep things in balance, and they don't know where the Philosopher's Stone is, so they don't don't want the archmage to die just yet. So they just seal everyone away and just say, fuck it, we'll figure this out in the future. The next day, we actually have class with Dr. Chartreuse, who teaches us a little bit about alchemy. And here we don't really learn too much about any more story elements other than just background on the actual use of alchemy in the game's lore, which is fine. It's not terrible, but it doesn't really further along any plot points, at least yet. So the battle we have next, which is supposed to be kind of a test of understanding for alchemy, is not the greatest. First of all, it's not very important. Opalneria is still mad at him for his lion self and not loving her, so she's left some runes around with some ghosts, which is weird, and he asks you to help him clean up her runes by just destroying them because he doesn't need any more broken equipment. But I don't understand why these things are even here, and while the teachers are having these little petty fights, this whole place is fucking screwed. If someone comes here with any amount of common sense, they're just gonna shut this school down right away, man. Again, this battle isn't that great. The first thing you do is actually get shown that Dr. Chartreuse's units can be used on your side. They are yellow, though, and they aren't green, which is yours, and red, which is the enemy's. Yellow enemies can be brought to your side by having one of your units, doesn't matter who, go touch them, just walk over them. I don't know why that exists. It's very, very seldom that it happens, and it literally takes seconds for your units to touch them, and now they are yours. They should just let them start right away or put a time limit on them, because this just seems very unnecessary. Regardless, here I learn a little bit about alchemy by clicking on the units and looking at them, and they just aren't that great right yet, and the fairies are really good. It's hard to argue with a fast-moving unit that can go through walls and is ranged. Like, why would you want to use anything else? So I use them to destroy all of her runes, and we win. After this battle, we see Hiram and Miss Opalneria talking in the hallway about how she is Luge's apprentice, so we know that the one powerful professor who originally made the Philosopher's Stone with Grammel and the archmage is her mentor. So now we know that she has a little bit more stake in this, so now she can be part of the people who might have accidentally released the archmage, but she's actually going after Grimlet. She wants to destroy Grimlet because she thinks that the Philosopher's Stone is in danger and the archmage might come out soon, so she's trying very quickly to destroy Grimlet. Now, Lilith remembers that she did destroy Grimlet, but she died in the process, so she's trying to figure out whether or not it's worth it to save her. For the next day, we actually meet Margarita, and we tell her the whole thing that happened because we believe she's just, our friend, and we want her to help us. And she says, hey, I actually know where that seal is for the archmage, which his name is Calveros. It's in Miss Opalneria's room. She has the seal that is holding him back. I don't know why it's just sitting out in her room. It may be protected by her runes, but goddamn, why is it just sitting out there, man? Why don't they have this thing under magical lock and fucking key? Margarita then hands you a new Grimoire that has this new unit for the glamour section, the big unit for the glamour section, and says, hey, we can use this and fight Miss Opalneria's runes to then take the seal of the archmage. So that's what you do. This new unit is the big unit for the glamour, just like the dragon is the big unit for the devil's section. This one is for glamour, and it's not as cool as the dragon who climbs slowly across the screen. He has a lot of health, he can hit a lot of enemies. This one does fly across the screen. She's quicker. You do have to reload her ammo as she needs to have ammo to fire. It does hit in an area. She's much quicker. She has less health, and I think she's just more utility based because she can really back up units really well, but she isn't as good as the dragon, nor is she good as the Chimera we see later. So we'll see him soon, but she's pretty decent, and it honestly helps me win this battle super quick. This battle is not hard at all. After this, we find out that Margarita is actually here to set Calveros free, the archmage free, and she was here with that intent the entire time, so she isn't necessarily your friend. She puts you and Hiram asleep, takes the seal, and you wake up the next day. And at this point, it is really late. Miss Opalneria has not come back from trying to destroy Grimlet, which means that she's probably gone. You're pretty sure Margarita already opened up the seal, and you and Hiram must now fight to get out of the castle. This battle isn't too terrible, but it does show that we're learning a little bit more about the game, and we've been giving more tools. So you actually fight someone who has dragons and access to the cats that will put your dragons to sleep, and that's really what the power struggle is between me and the enemy in this one. Getting more dragons, getting more fairies, having my cats ready to put the enemy dragons to sleep, which is the hardest part. And honestly, in the end, I win just about 20 minutes in, which is about the time limit matches usually last. but it's honestly the best duo is the dragon and the fairy. The dragon is slow moving and very, very powerful. You just keep the fairies kind of on top of the dragons, and when the dragons start to get hit by either cats or enemies it can't reach or enemies it's having problems with, have the fairies go in and take them out so your dragon can continue to clear out the enemy's runes. At the end of the battle, Advocat comes in to help you, although you do end up leaving Hiram to die because there's nothing you can really do. I guess he's already hurt. After you leave the room, you guys run into Grimlet, who is actually alive this time, confronting the archmage, who has been let out of his seal. Grimlet says, "I'm here to take your soul," because that's what our deal was, and Calvaros is like, no, I'm almost at the Philosopher's Stone, just hold on a second. But it doesn't matter, Grimlet eats his ass, and then he turns to Advocat and says, were you the one who helped release me? And he's like, Advocate's like, no, a devil doesn't help another devil, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, some lore in the story. But then he says that Miss Opalneria probably failed on her own since Lilith Blonde's story about the things that were going to happen made Gramaldor hasten his efforts to make the rune to destroy Grimlet. So this time, he went faster and made more mistakes. That means while Grimlet did not come around the very first time, only the Archmage did, this time both of them were there. So things did change a little bit. Grimlet, who is an all-powerful devil, at this point is pretty obvious he's an all-powerful devil, turns over and says, okay, so I left Lilith Blonde for last, Advocate, like you asked, so I'm gonna eat her now, I don't even know why it mattered, you left her for last. And he's like, oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then the bells start to ring, and Advocate's like, all right, Lilith, when you return, remember what to do. So it's at this point, Advocate obviously understands that Lilith really is going back in time. I don't know why he knows that it's the bells. I don't think that's ever really explained, but he definitely knows the bells signal the fact that she's about to return, so he tells her to remember, and she's like, duh, what? We are now back at the very first day yet again, the third time. So this time we go to talk to Dr. Chartreuse early because she's trying to figure out anything she can as early as possible. But he needs help because the Chimera experiments he's working on have gone haywire, and this is actually the battle where we get to meet the big version of the enemy for the Chimeras, which is this grotesque monstrosity. And this is probably my favorite unit, at least a tie with the dragon, only because it looks intense. I mean, look at this thing. They did a great job animating and drawing this thing. It's really weird, and it really does feel like some amalgamation of, you know, homunculus and stuff like that he'd been working on. It's just this like nasty coming together of a bunch of other units that he's spliced together, and it does attack. It's pretty strong. The only thing it doesn't have though is it cannot attack astral units, which is good because we just started to unlock the ability for my fairies to become astral when I have them select the ability. However, this battle does not let me use fairies. I only have the alchemy and the devil runes to be able to summon stuff, which is fine. I end up winning the battle because I do put down some towers and make it a little easier for my guys to fight, and the ground units that come with the other sets of magic aren't too bad. The fairies are just very obviously easier to use, especially on the lower difficulties, but these guys are strong and they take out many units very quickly. So it's not too bad, and I'm able to take out the Chimeras the first time I meet them. After the battle, and before you get a chance to talk to Dr. Chartreuse yourself, Gramaldor shows up, and Lilith realizes that she cannot talk to him the way she wants to. She's now trying to keep things quiet because she realizes if she tells Gramaldor about the plans that are about to happen, he's going to screw up on the magic runes and get himself, including other people, killed. So she decides to ask him about the brooch on his neck, which turns out to be the seal for Grimlet himself. I don't understand why he's wearing it around his neck, probably to keep it out of everyone else's hands, but goddamn, dude, you're walking around to school for kids. Why are you wearing that shit? Anyway, Dr. Chartreuse notices that you already know how to use a lot of high-level rune stuff, which means that, you know, well, we've been back through time a couple times at this point, so we know how things work. And at the very end, Bartito says, hey, I know you're hiding something, come with me, and then we go with him. Bartito quickly tells us that the Philosopher's Stone will make you all-powerful if you can find it, and he thinks that you're actually here to be after it, which sounds like he might be here to be after it as well. But you're interrupted by the cat that Amaretta has been holding whenever you see her. He says, hey, Amaretta's in danger, can you come help me? And she's like, yeah, of course I'll come help you. So she leaves Bartito and goes to help Amaretta, who is being attacked by devils, which probably means that Advocat is behind this, or at least someone like Advocat is behind this. You decide to help Amaretta, and we go into battle. This battle is pretty long because there are quite a few number of enemy runes you must destroy. You don't have to kill all the enemies, you don't have to kill all of their structures, just the runes. But those runes are nestled behind towers and tons of enemies, so you do have to take your time and at least clear out some of them. The fairies do help. I use a fairy to scout around the map to just look around, and honestly, I can kind of go in and pick off just the runes, but it's not always possible. Sometimes it just happens where it's easier to slowly bulldoze across the map and just destroy all of their stuff. So for me, it takes longer because I don't micromanage as hard. It is a little tedious micromanaging several groups, but I do get a new ability on one of my alchemy creatures, the homunculus. He has an ability that is like this psionic storm, and once you upgrade the rune that he comes from enough, he has this ability unlocked. You select somewhere on the map and he'll throw this storm out. It does not hurt buildings, but it will hurt all enemy units. And this is really helpful for small groups of enemies and even like a big dragon, like popping it right on top of a dragon. It's fairly damaging. You can use it twice for each character because they have just enough mana to cast it twice, and then it's just a super helpful thing, but you also have to watch out for it yourself. The enemy will use it, and it's super powerful against my favorite unit, the fairies, because there's so many of them and they're so little. If they cast it once on a group, they're all dead so fast you can't even move them out of the area of effect of this stupid storm. That's why it helps to scout ahead and to constantly keep that group of fairies you're working on moving, so that if you see one, you move them and you watch him cast it, and then you keep them moving to then get out of the storm. Now by this point, the battles are pretty much the same. I build fairies and maybe dragons, and then I bulldoze everything in the level. This is how it's pretty much going to be from now on. I'll still talk about the battles, but they aren't that interesting as we move forward. Yes, the setups, yes, the enemies you're fighting, but it's really not anything unique past a certain point. There's a few little things here and there, but you're going to see the same battles over and over. Surprisingly, at the end, Advocat is not the attacker. It's actually Grimlet's forces who are coming to attack her, so he saves us. Although, really, it's me because I was the one who fought the fucking battle. We learn that the reason that Advocat has been so fucking pervy on this woman is because she's not actually a woman, she's an angel that was created into the body of a human. And we learn that she's actually the creation of Dr. Chartreuse. So, you know, things get a little thicker. He made her body and then trapped an angel spirit. Maybe not trapped, maybe just put in. That sounds like he forced it. I'm not really sure, but this game is weird, so don't put it past them. But he says it's an ultimate life form, and she's like, yeah, I was born not too long ago. I'm just, you know, I don't know what to do. But then she's got this existential crisis. She doesn't know what her reason to live is, and so she starts saying weird things. And he's like, no, Dr. Church is like, no, you're fine. You don't need this. And she's like, well, yeah, but I need something. I exist in this physical world now. What am I supposed to do? So it's like, oh my god, I don't know if we should be tackling this whole thing, but you know what? Let's add this to the pile of stuff going on right now. We skip to the next day where we find Bartito where we're supposed to meet him, but he is beaten up a bit because he was attacked by Advocat, which this is just also surprising, just kind of randomly. Well, Advocat has figured out that Bartito is actually here as a student from a different country here to spy. I don't know what that all's about, and I don't know why we want to add that again onto the pile of stuff going on. I think everyone's backstory is a little too out there and has lots and lots of questions for them to be using this many things. I don't understand what country we're in or what country he's from or why he'd be here spying, but it seems pretty like a lot of information is left out. So, but fine, whatever. So in the end, they are both fighting, Bartito and Advocat. Lilith comes in and says, I'm gonna break up the fight. The problem is that the fight turns into just them beating your ass in the battle, and you have to fight both of them off. Yes, you can do it, and it really wasn't too hard. Honestly, the enemy in sweep mode doesn't really send a lot of forces to you. It really happens once you start messing with them, so you can kind of pick and choose. They do every so often have a little Zerg swarm come in, and that's fine. You can usually handle it just fine, but I make so many friggin' fairy groups that it's like 8 of them, and I just send them all in, and eventually everyone dies. It's really not that hard of a fight. It's just weird that you're supposed to be stopping their fight, but they're fighting you instead. You're just stopping them attacking you, whatever. Advocate does say, wow, I haven't had so much fun in a long time because I'm so powerful. And it's like, dude, this is only day 3 and I'm kicking your ass. Afterwards, Advocat tries to make a contract with Bartito to get him to keep quiet about his spyness. Lilith just kind of goes along with it because at this point she's like, this is not part of the Archmage or Grimlet's plan, so can we just get this over with? But you do have help from Bartito for the next day. He is going to help you get the Archmage's seal, and you're trying to get it before Margarita. Obviously, she's the one who grabs it and breaks the seal in the first place. But then you're stopped by Miss Opalneria, who has the seal in her room. She's pissed at you guys for coming in here and fucking shit up, so she's gonna beat your asses. Now, this fight that we go into is really no different. The one difference is that it tries to get you to use your new necromancy unit, Karen, who actually can carry your allies to different places. Absolutely 100% fucking useless for any other time, honestly, but right now it's great because there's a crystal that you can get some extra crystals from and have units getting more money and then setting them. Now, the one good thing about this battle that I did not know, here's why this battle is important, because I didn't realize you could put your own runes down. I don't know why I wasn't paying attention for the last like 6 or 7 hours in the game, but apparently if you press triangle, you can summon any of the runes that you know right onto the field. So I don't know what I've been doing, but anytime that I can't use fairies is because I just forgot to press triangle and summon the rune. Now I'm sad. I'm like, what was my problem? So you can summon a rune for dragons and fairies, which is all I ever want anyway, wherever you want, as long as it allows you to place it there, and then you can summon them and fucking use them, which is what I do. And honestly, the battles after this become much easier because now I can have my favorite units all together. And at this point, I've begun to get enough rune level understanding that my fairies are much stronger. My dragons are even much stronger. By summoning specific runes and leveling them up, you get bonuses to defense, health, and damage for some of your units. All you have to do is look at the rune itself in the menu to see what it will do and what level it will do it at. Then you just level it up there and your units get those benefits. After this battle, you've knocked Miss Opalneria unconscious. I don't know how, and I don't know why she stays unconscious for so long. She'll need to set up a neurology appointment after this. But Hiram comes in and says, how dare you do this to Miss Opalneria? But it's like, bro, we've got bigger things to deal with right now. So you take the soul container back to your room. The next day, Bartito comes in and says, dude, the devils are gathering to wake Grimlet. The teachers are all missing. I can't find anyone else. You need to come with me because Gamaldor is the only one actually fighting, and Grimlet's around his neck, so he's about to wake up. He said, this is fucked. She's like, yeah, you're right, it is. Hopefully we can go back and reset again because it seems like this is not going to work out. And yeah, she's fucking right. This shit doesn't work out third time through. But as you guys leave to go help Gramaldor, Margarita sneaks into your room to steal the soul container. She's like, I don't get it, but I'm going to take this shit. In the next battle with Gramaldor and Bartito, I actually decide to use just the chimeras to take out the devils who are attacking us. And it's honestly not too hard because none of them are astral, so the chimera can hit everyone. Plus, they're just so fucking fast and strong that if you group up like 3 or 4 of them, they can destroy a little army so fucking quick, man. So I use them to make quick work of all the devils. And this battle is over, I mean, in 20 minutes, I just protect myself. It's just survive 20 minutes. Now, again, you can go destroy all the enemy's runes to end it quicker, but I decide I'm just gonna hang out and let this go the way I think it's supposed to go. After this, Gramaldor loses his will to keep Grimlet inside of his little brooch, but Grimlet comes out and Amaretta shows up and says, hey, I know that I'm the angel spirit and angel spirits can attract devils, so I'm going to use myself to attract them, and then my cat is going to knock down my homunculus jar, because apparently all alchemy deals with homunculuses, putting them in jars, and that's where they live. But because she's special, she has her jar somewhere else. It's almost like a phylactery for a lich. So her cat destroys her jar, which frees her soul, and because Grimlet's so close, it just turns him into ash. It's very weird, and there's a lot to unpack in this game, but not all of it gets unpacked. It really doesn't, and it doesn't feel great sometimes. I really wish there was a lot more background to this, but there just isn't. I just feel like there's a lot missing. After Grimlet turns to ash, we still realize the Archmage is being released. There's nothing we can do. Bartito makes a deal with Advocat with his own blood, a contract that says he must save Lilith and then he can have Bartito's soul. Advocat already knows that the bells at this point are going to send Lilith back in time. Not sure how he knows still, but it doesn't matter. He fulfills his contract, but because time went backwards, there is no contract, so I guess Bartito is saved. But the bells ring before the Archmage shows up, and we go back to the very first night yet again again for the 4th time. This time, Lilith's trying her absolute best not to screw around, and she goes into the hall to see this ghost who's been wandering the halls. We see the ghost and Miss Opalneria talking. The ghost is Luge, who we barely learned a little bit ago that she is the ghost. So she isn't just a nobody. She is actually the deceased professor who helped create the Philosopher's Stone, friend with Grammel, as well as the archmage. And she's just roaming the halls, and apparently she's just killing people. She must really like doing this, or I'm not sure. And she talks to her staff, and she's very scantily clad and sexual, and it's really not that interesting, especially because it seems like a lot of the women in this are very just over the top. But she decides to tell Opalneria, like, hey, you gotta get ready. So she's the one who's helping her get ready this rune to get rid of Grimlet. Now at the very end, Margarita shows up and says that she's upset she couldn't find what she was looking for, but doesn't really tell us what it is, although we already know. It's the Grimoire for the new unit we got from her quite a while back. That was when we helped her go get the seal of the archmage the first time, right before we found out she is actually working for the archmage. She needed the Grimoire to get the seal in the first place. Well, for some reason, whenever we obtain a Grimoire, the time goes back, we keep the Grimoire. So that's really helpful information. She couldn't find it because we already had it and it stayed with us. Not sure why, but that's what's happening. So now we know that Margarita is having trouble getting the seal, which is good. We obviously don't want her to get it. The next thing that happens is the next morning we talk to Grameldor about the whole thing, except we don't tell him the plans for the archmage or anything like that. The only thing we tell him is that Luge's plan is not going to work. Her rune is incomplete and he needs to look over the details because it's what ends up killing all of them. Grameldor is obviously kind of upset about this and doesn't understand. He's like, I'm not sure about this, but maybe I will. Advocate comes in and says, hey, Lilith needs to be punished for the fact that she was out late at night and she's like admitting to it. So I'm going to fight her and she's going to get punished. This battle goes exactly as the other ones. I build fairies, and instead of building dragons, I decide to build the big spirit that is also part of the glamour magic. She's pretty strong and she comes out a little quicker than the dragons. She moves a little bit quicker, and with the upgrades, she's much more powerful because glamour was the very first magic I got. So my upgrade system for that is a little further along. So I use them to destroy Advocate pretty fucking quickly. Afterwards, Grameldor believes her, but is very quickly pulled away by Bartito, who says that Dr. Chartreuse's experiments with the Chimera are going crazy, which, if you remember, was what we helped him with the very first time, the last set of days. This is set 4. So we helped him last time, well, this time we aren't, so Grameldor has to go do it. But we do talk to Advocate and we ask him a question, and this time, instead of asking him a question that he thinks is stupid, we ask him a question that, what can high-level devils do? Can you make us go back in time? She's still trying to figure out exactly what's making her go back in time. She thinks it was the contract with Bartito, because when they make contracts, they get more powerful. So she thought, well, maybe that's what happened. But then she thinks, no, it was kind of on the spot. It would have been real weird for it to happen all at the same time. Advocate says something about planning ahead. So she's like, that would not have happened on the spot, and then he hoped it would have come down to that. He also said to you that he would never make a contract with Bartito. Why would you even think he ever did? Well, obviously she lived in a time when they did make a contract, but contracts don't go back in time. Only the Grimoires and her knowledge of the days that happened go back with her. So now she's getting a little closer. Devils technically could go back in time, but it would require a lot of preparation and energy, something she thinks maybe the Philosopher's Stone has. Next, we run into Margarita, who is being held prisoner in Miss Opalneria's room because she went in to steal the soul container for the archmage. Well, you end up helping Margarita fight Opalneria, which it's just another similar battle. I build fairies, I build the large glamour units, and I go through and just wreck her shit. She really has no chance against me. And this leads to Opalneria talking to Bartitos, who is telling her about Hiram. Hiram, the other student, is in love with her. And she's like, nah, Luge said that her student betrayed her, which was Dr. Chartreuse, and that got her killed, and then Dr. Chartreuse turned into a lion, and there's a bunch of like little things going on here. But she says, no, I have one more plan if this rune won't work, because Grameldor realized that the rune wasn't going to work, so he got rid of it for now. So she realizes the only other way to deal with things is to use Amaretta, who at first she thought she wasn't sure who she was, but Bartito helps her understand that she's actually the angel in the homunculus and not Dr. Chartreuse's lover, because Bartito says he's not a sexual deviant like you, which, oh, count it. And Margarita asks for the Grimoire you have with the Morning Star, which is the unit for glamour that she got from you a while back. And she's like, no. Lilith's like, no, you're not having this because I know what you're going to get with it. So she asks Margarita not to touch the Archmage's soul box because he's just going to kill you anyway. But Margarita at the very end still plans on doing some crazy shit. Lilith's next idea is to go save Amaretta because she does not want her to be sacrificed to kill Grimlet. She believes there's another way. So she goes to find Amaretta to hide her in her room, and she says, I will give you all that you want to Amaretta because Amaretta does want something, and it's love, right? Oh god, they're gonna be making love in that room all night, huh? This is what this homunculus wants. Okay, fine, whatever. But on their way back, they get caught by Miss Opalnaria herself, who's there to try and get Amaretta. This battle is yet again about 20 minutes of me just summoning fairies and the high-level glamour units to fight Opalnaria, targeting her runes to win the battle as quickly as possible, with really no interesting things happening. I've stopped at this point learning new things. I've also learned pretty much all of the upgrades for each of the runes, and because I only use the glamour ones and sometimes the dragon one, that's it. It's as simple as that. It is kind of boring, yes, I understand, but this is just how the battles go. They are very simple, especially on this difficulty. So making fairies and units that fly, I can just go destroy runes as quickly as possible. At the end of the battle, Lilith asks one of her cats to put Opalnaria to sleep for 3 days so she cannot interfere with anything, which is plenty of time before the bells go off again if she fucks up. We see nothing else about Amaretta, but the next day, Lilith decides she thinks she's gonna get one up on all the devils by making a deal with Advocat. See, he has the Grimoire that is called Lemegeton that's very, very, very powerful. We don't really know exactly what it does, but apparently it's very powerful. She's gonna use it to summon Grimlet to put him away, but she doesn't know the extent of how that stuff works, so she just kind of blindly is making this at this point. Advocate kind of recognizes that she's gonna have some problems, and he only agrees to let her have the Lemegeton because it does put him at a disadvantage if she agrees to give him her soul in like 1 week, and Lilith's not allowed to use any runes on the devil himself, so that means if he decides to do something, she cannot stop him. The next day, we wake up and they have some pillow talking between each other, and then Gaff comes in to tell you that he's been watching Grammel for you, and now he's acting kind of weird, which means that Grimlet is being summoned and he took too long to fucking tell you. So our next battle is actually against Dr. Chartreuse, who thinks that you've been possessed by Advocat because you have the Lemegeton and you're there trying to summon Grimlet, and he's real confused. So he fights you, and for some reason he's much stronger this time, even though you fought him before, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I sweep this motherfucker with dragons because dragons and fairies are pretty much the best group at this point that I figured out. After this battle, Lilith summons Grimlet and she tries to command him to do shit, but he won't because he's just stubborn, so her plan completely failed. Although Amaretta does show up and does have Gaff break her vial so that she will again explode and taking Grimlet with her, so she can save everyone because now that Lilith is her lover or something, I don't know, she feels fulfilled, very fulfilled. But she almost gets Advocat as well, so she takes out Grimlet and almost kills Advocat. Grammel is alive, but just barely. The next morning is the 5th day, and Margarita comes in while Lilith is crying because obviously all this stuff just happened last night, and she says, hey, I realized I just let loose the archmage and I want to save you, and Lilith's like, oh god damn it, I forgot about that. And then Shirley, the frog, says, surely you don't think you'll make it out here alive, and Lilith says, yes I do, and don't call me Shirley. So there's the airplane reference, motherfucker. We then do battle with Calvaros' forces, which are not too difficult to fight. It only takes me about 12 minutes because I've gotten this whole thing down to a science, dragons and fairies. And now that I have all the upgrades for each of the runes, I just very quickly upgrade everything until I'm as powerful as I can be, and then send my guys in to destroy everything. After this, we confront Calvaros, which we have really nothing we can do. Advocate comes up to collect both our soul and the Grimoire. The archmage is actually pissed because it was his Grimoire. So that means when Calvaros died, the Lemegeton became Advocate's, and Advocate was actually bound to Calvaros at one point. Then he says you can't bring the book with you when you die because you can't do that. But Lilith gets a good idea because she realizes nothing can be done here. So she says, okay, well good, I can come back around, and this time I need the Grimoire. I know that whenever I go back in time, I keep the Grimoires I have. So now I'll start with the Lemegeton, which is really super important. She starts with it. Advocate realizes yet again on each of the nights that she's going to go back in time. He's very quick and just kind of understands it. I mean, that's just how it is, but he understands it, and she gets out of her contract pact that she made with him just recently, so good on her. After we go back in time, the first thing that happens is we go check on Luge's ghost, because at this point we know who she is, and we have the Lemegeton, and we know pretty much everything there is to know about these 5 days. So Lilith tries to make a pact with her, saying, hey, if you want to get free of this, you just gotta, don't have her use the rune, because the rune you make to kill Grimlet is incomplete. It's gonna blow up in everyone's faces. So Luge actually agrees because she thinks you're weird, and I mean, some new kid just pops up and knows all this information about you. It's kind of hard to be like, oh, yeah, maybe I should listen. So then the next day, Opalneria is super pissed, and instead of coming to Dr. Chartreuse and just talking about things, she destroys his whole lab and is about to destroy Amaretta's flask. We stop her by summoning a bunch of monsters and beating the shit out of her. And again, this one only takes about 10 minutes for me to finish because I have this down to a science. I just fucking sweep Opalneria's runes so quick. In the end, she actually talks to Dr. Chartreuse in a normal manner and says, if you don't love me, I will not pursue you. And he's like, okay, look, I'll just tell you, I don't need you. And she's like upset, but she actually does say, okay, I'll be done. I think this is why people need to talk to each other. Honestly, don't hold things back, people. But then she learns the reason that Dr. Chartreuse was cursed in the first place was because he did not love Luge, so she cursed him. So she lied to Opalneria about breaking the curse if Dr. Chartreuse accepted love from Opalneria. That is not how it would have worked. It was supposed to just be a mean thing for Luge to say to them to try and get them to do that, to find out that no, it does not break the curse. But he already knows this is not what's going to do it. He's like, no, this is not how it's going to work. She cursed me for this reason. It's not going to break. Things are quickly escalating as Lilith goes to save Amaretta yet again from another situation that was unexpected. Gamaldor is actually going to sacrifice her to kill Grimlet. At this point, Luge has already decided not to use the rune, and Gamaldor was allowing her to use the rune to kill Grimlet before in each of the other timelines. But now that he knows it's not going to work, he thinks he must do it now, so he's going to use Amaretta's soul to kill Grimlet. But Lilith comes over and saves her. Advocate gets mad because he thinks she might actually be in cahoots with Grimlet, so she runs into a room with Amaretta to get her way. He has some runes set up in there for a Grimlet surprise, and fucking she's like, I'm gonna kick your ass, and so he thinks he's going to punish us. But then it takes us about 13 minutes in a battle to sweep his fucking runes. At this point, the battles are going quick. I'm losing very few units, and I'm destroying them very fast. So it's a little hard for me to want to go over each of the battles when the battles are absolutely the same each time. There's nothing really new until the very last battle. Lilith and Amaretta share a very weird, heartfelt moment, as Amaretta has yet to have met Lilith in this timeline, and Lilith is just gushing over here about Amaretta, and she says, I know you, and I'll give you as much love as you want. So that just means, hey, we're about to go fuck a bunch. After this, Lilith confronts Margarita, who is trying to steal the Archmage's lockbox for his soul yet again. She says, hey, I'm actually trying to open up the seal as well so I can talk to him, so I'll help you. And Margarita's like, oh, goody, she's gonna help me save the Archmage, even though I didn't know she was part of this whole thing. Well, the familiar in her head, the Brog Shirley, realizes that Lilith's lying, and so he decides to take over Amaretta's body and fight Lilith. So you have two armies in this map. One is Margarita's and one is Shirley's. Which is actually like Opalneria's or something. But you need to fight Opalneria's runes because you need to get the lockbox first now that you know Shirley is bad. But do not hurt Margarita's stuff. Now, it's pretty easy to tell which is which. The ones with the target above their head here are the ones you're supposed to get. If they do not say target above their head, it's not the correct unit, so don't kill them. Because if you kill them, you will hurt Margarita. So I sweep the battle again because there's half of the map to worry about, since half of the map is Margarita, and you don't want to hurt her anyway. After the battle, Hiram shows up and professes his love for Miss Opalneria, and she's like, well, I'm like 100-year-old witch, and he's like, time means nothing, age means nothing, and it's like, yeah, of course, all this stuff, sure, but I don't understand why we're just now figuring all this out, and while this is now playing out, I guess it's a fitting end for her because she found love, because that's what she wanted. It just happens very quickly, feels a little shoehorned in at the end, but whatever, at least her story ends. During the next day, Dr. Chartreuse comes to find Amaretta and finds out that Amaretta doesn't need him anymore, even though he created her. So just like Opalneria's turn down of him, he gets turned down by Amaretta, and he's like, all right, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, you're figuring things out. So then he leaves as well. On the way out, fucking Gaff accidentally cracks the Archmage's soul container like a weirdo. Also, he's almost destroyed Amaretta's flask. Seems like Gaff should get the fuck out. The Archmage is released, but Lilith begins summoning Grimlet to take over the Archmage's body because that's due to his contract. He's like, wait, whoa, are you summoning Grimlet? And Lilith's like, yep, she's gonna come meet you because that's the contract that you had with him. And he's like, nah, shit. So she decides to fight the shit out of him as well. And now it says to survive for 30 minutes, which is what I do. I actually just survive for 30 minutes because this battle is actually a little bit more difficult. You are attacked from everywhere by lots of enemies. You can destroy the runes and win, which I probably could have just done anyway, but instead I decided I was a little tired that day. I was just gonna plant myself there and live for 30 minutes. It was pretty close though. I almost lost all of my runes and that would have killed me, but luckily I started building some more. I was able to destroy his forces before he stopped me, and at 30 minutes, the battle ends. Now after this, I'm just slightly confused. See, she releases Grimlet, who eats the Archmage, because that's due to their contract. Then the Grimlet turns around and says, you summoned me, you better make this quick. And I'm like, well, last time he just was like, no. He just said no. Now this time she is offering her soul to him, so I suppose maybe that's the difference. But he does accept and they make a contract. The problem is that she very, very easily tricks him into breaking his own contract, but it's not like it's some crazy thing. This is something I would expect to happen. I've seen it happen lots of times in different forms of media. So she says, hey, now that we have a contract, you can't break it or you'll go back to hell and you can't do anything about it. But now what I want for my wish is for you to embrace God. I want you to, be good. And he's like, no, that's an invalid wish. But she's like, well, too bad. You already signed a contract. And he's like, no, and then goes back to hell because he breaks it. Of course, he's not going to be good because then it would ruin everything. He would never be able to come back at all. But if he breaks the contract, I think thousands of years later he can come back, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure. But this gets him. Absolutely just gets him. But does no one think of this ahead of time? Like, I feel like this is a pretty common thing to have happen, like to be tricked out of your devil's contract. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe Lilith's literally the first fucking person to do something like that. Advocat seems to think so. So he's all happy. He's all giddy about her doing this. They save Gamaldor. They save Amaretta. They save Margarita. They save Opalneria. They save everyone so far. After this, Lilith has a golem break a hole in her floor because that is where the Philosopher's Stone is hidden, in her room for some reason. Advocat shows up and says he wants to check it out, but she goes, if you would like the Lemegeton back, you must stay here. And he's all like, wow, how dare you make deals with devils so casually? And she's like, heh 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 heh. And I'm like, all right, yeah, let's get moving here. But we are not done fighting. There is one more battle. Yes, that's right. Both the Archmage and Grimlet are gone. But protecting the Philosopher's Stone down this big long set of stairs is Calvaros' forces. He just has a bunch of runes that have been set up here for how many years, and they're waiting to stop anyone who tries to come to the Philosopher's Stone. This battle is only slightly different because the map is vertically much higher and taller, and you must pretty much scale down the castle to get to the bottom and destroy all of the runes. This does take me a little while, but only because of the sheer amount of enemy forces and runes there are. Otherwise, this is still a very similar battle. I spread the dragons out and just have them walk down, destroying everything in their path, backed up by some fairies who help them when they need it. Otherwise, this battle is the last one that I'll do, and sadly, there just isn't very much going on for the battle system here. I'll talk more about it at the end. So this battle ends, and we get to finally get to the Philosopher's Stone. After this battle, we find the Philosopher's Stone, but we also find an older version of ourselves. You see, we've fallen into the time travel pitfall for the newbie, where one of us is left behind and we keep coming back, and we've met ourselves a million times in this room, and we've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, which to me doesn't feel the greatest. I understand that that's what they wanted to go for, but it really doesn't feel like it's been that long. Yeah, they say it's been that long, but there's just this feeling. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. I didn't expect it to, last even longer. What I'm saying is that when shows and movies and games and books do this, it just feels a little bit more like maybe it has been that long. But here it really only feels like it's been 5 days, 5 separate times. But I'll suspend disbelief, even though I've already been suspending it this entire time because this game has no sense to it. No, I'm kidding. That's seriously how it goes. So it's this whole game, you have to suspend your disbelief, man. But in the end, she says, look, you have one choice here. You can destroy destroy this and stop the time loop, or you can just continue to go through it, which obviously doesn't sound the greatest. You'll get stuck in this room like your future self did, and then you'll tell yourself later how to do things, and then you'll probably get stuck here again. So she decides at the last second, let's go ahead and destroy this thing. I don't want to live in this time loop anymore. And so she does. And that's it, people. We have reached the end of the game. We are now onto the sunset phase, where we hear all the epilogue stuff. People have done better now. Lilith stayed at the school for a year, but she left. She's a super powerful magician because obviously she spent thousands of years learning all this stuff. She lives in the city with Amaretta, and Amaretta doesn't age, and so she gets to have sex with this woman who doesn't age, I guess. That's the lesson of the story, people. Everyone is doing better, and she comes back to revisit years later, and everyone's still there, all the teachers. She even remembers a lot of the students, and you get to see a little bit about stuff, but nothing is that concrete. Really, we got all the concrete stuff. Yes, this is cute, but I didn't really care that much for the other characters. It was more this like small section of 5 days repeating. That's what I really liked. So this stuff for me isn't that big, but everyone does live happily ever after. Even Luge's ghost, who apparently walks into the room with the Philosopher's Stone, disappears forever and goes to another realm, universe, whatever it is. So we did it. We beat two-dimensional anime StarCraft. Wonderful. Let's go to a little bit of a review for the game for me. To be honest, I like the game. I don't think it's a great game. And yes, you can get mad at me all you want for it, but it's not a great game. See, the gameplay and the story both take about 50-50 of what's going on. The story does seem to maybe be 60, and then the gameplay's 40, because it feels like there's a lot more story. Although the story itself, while it's interesting, you have to interact with it a lot by just clicking the button or just listening and reading. But there's nothing else to do. All of the gameplay is saved for just the battles. There are no choices, which feels like this game should have been made for choices, but there's none. So you never get to see anything like that. It's all one linear, straightforward story that you have no real interaction with except for winning battles and moving forward. Now, that's not terrible. That's not to say that this game would have been better by adding choice into the story portions, but I definitely would have liked something else, because it is kind of boring after a while to be listening to this story that's just, it's fine, but I would like a little bit more maybe, because the gameplay itself, once you get into the actual battles, isn't very interesting. Yes, at first there's a lot to learn and you realize there's new units and stuff to get, but after I realized the fairies and dragons are the way to go every single time, it became too much of the same thing over and over. I mean, even if I had, let's just say that I decided to use new units for each battle, I still would have found myself bored by the fact that the maps are almost exactly the same until the very last map, and your goals are almost always the same, except for the very few times where you have to hold out for 20 or 30 minutes. And even that's not that much different. You can still win by just destroying all of the runes. So the gameplay is interesting for a 2D StarCraft type game. There just isn't very much to do. You've got a lot of micromanaging of units because you can only select so many units. You can even only zoom out so far, and so you can't see a lot of the map all at once. You're kind of relying on these small, intimate battles, and even with the big enemies, they're still small and intimate. You've got to pay attention because even one unit can put your dragon to sleep and then destroy the rest of your forces. So battles are okay, and I'm sure at harder difficulties, they are actually more difficult, but how much more fun is it gonna be? Because, like I said, there's nothing new. Each time you play, you just need to go destroy the runes. And honestly, if you were going to be playing on the harder difficulties, I probably would have just targeted the runes and done my best to just go in and snipe the runes, learn where they were, and then beat the battle in about 8 or 9 minutes, just so I didn't have to fight too many enemies. So I'm not sure I like the 2D StarCraft style battle in this game, at least. I just feel like it's very, very much lacking. Yes, the big units are cool. Yes, the game works like you'd think it would work, but there just isn't enough to interest me any further. The story itself was fine for a time travel story about magic. I mean, it's fine. It's not bad, but it's not terribly interesting. Like I said, I do wish I had some kind of say in what was going on, but I don't. I don't even have a chance to really figure out who done it. There's not really a who done it so much as it's where's the Philosopher's Stone and how do you put things together. But again, because you aren't having any say in what goes on, you just get to kind of watch the main character figure it out herself. So yes, it's a little interesting, but I don't feel like I was a part of things. I really just feel like I made fairies run around and shoot things for a while and then watched some anime, which isn't a bad time, but for a game, I'd like some more input. I'd like to put some more input. So I do have to say the sounds are pretty good. The animations are great. I do think that there should have been more animation in the story elements, but it's not bad. I definitely don't fault the game for how much they put into it and how little of a team they had, as far as I understand. So I'm happy to say that at least the animation is pretty nice. The voice, the dialogue, it's okay. I think, you know, it's hard for me to like the dialogue and the voicing in games. It's just always been a difficult thing because it always feels subpar to a lot of other things. So it was okay. It was fine. It made sense. The story moved along. Otherwise, this game is done. That's it. Game number 29 beaten. GrimGrimoire. So thank you all for watching. Let's go to the guessing game. Okay, here is the picture for the next game I'm going to be playing. This one is also from Stable Diffusion. I may change this in the future, but for now I still have Stable Diffusion. So, and this is all I need is just a fun picture for you guys to guess. So I'll use it for now. Here's the next game. This one might be a little hard to figure out, maybe. And this game also is excruciatingly, embarrassingly bad. I'm just gonna give you that right now. So if you want to if you want to take a stab in the dark, guess what this game is and what you have to do in this game. It's just so bad. And you know what? I'm going to give you one more small hint. This game took me 18 whole minutes to beat. Yes, you heard me correctly. I really saw credits after 18 minutes. And no, it's not some game like Toy Pals where there's just mini games. There are actual like things you have to win. It just only took 18 minutes. It's crazy. It's crazy. It really is. But I'm moving on to other games now and getting ready for some more videos. So thank you so much for being here and watching. I really appreciate it. This video was long as shit. And I hope that anyone who watched this who likes GrimGrimoire doesn't hate me too much. I don't mean the game bad, but there are issues with the game, and you know, one of them being having some sexual harassment type character. That sucked, but at least it wasn't very much of the game. I still fault them for it. You know, they don't need to be doing that weird shit, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I beat GrimGrimoire, and I'm actually kind of interested to play some of their other games, like Odin Sphere. I know they've made other games for the PS2, so I'm excited to see what they did with that game, because this one was weird. I've never heard of it. I can't believe how much I played when I was younger. Never heard of this game. Didn't even know anything about it. And this is one of the good things about this challenge is that I get to play so many games I've never heard of, you've probably never heard of, and you get to see all these cool gameplay elements and story that you've never seen before. So this will be great. All right, everyone, I'll be back for game number 30 soon.
Disappeared from this tower.